my view, I believe, is shared by most of the community here. It's a large crowd, they can speak for themselves. That we are stored up the kazoo from Bethesda to Friendship Heights. Our goal is not to have rows of stores along River Road and a lot of other stores. What this area provides is a service to the community, and we want to keep that service. And I know that you can come up with the principles that will keep that service if you set that as a goal. And that includes gas stations, pet stores, cleaners, and so on. And that is essential to meet what I hear you saying is you don't want people driving. Where are we going to have to drive to go to the gas station, or the pet store, or the cleaners if they're all missing from this area? This area also attracts people from down county because it is where the gas stations are and those service things are. We'll now have to drive up county, or I don't know where in Silver Spring there will be other areas and so on. It's going to be a large amount of traveling to reach things that are now very convenient. So I ask you to try to focus on those. This is an unusual situation here. And I believe the community feels that they want to go shopping, Bethesda, Friendship Heights, and so on offers them more than enough. My final point is I know there are tools that you can have, whether it's putting limits on the square footage of the store or having an overlay zone, that you can make sure we keep the properties that will provide services to the community, as well as to try to balance what you're trying to do and make a better community redevelopment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. The future of this country is with our children, and the plan that I'm hearing feels to me that it's putting our youth at risk just for their quality of life. So it doesn't seem to me that the plan for the school system has been thought through. I see one field that's been added when you bring all these children in who want to play soccer at a reasonable time within their community. I just don't see the plan. They're going to feed into high school somebody else's problem. I'm very concerned when I hear this. I have a college son and I have one who's in 8th grade, so the little kids of the community, it's not going to affect me personally, but I just feel a responsibility to the youth of the entire country, and this is putting them at risk. Just their quality of life, because they'll be stressed out on the roads, difficult to get to school, parents are stressed out, getting home from work. That's pretty much it.
I do want to go and mention something about the youth, and we did hear from many of the surrounding neighborhoods and how they managed to get to this school. And to get to this school, many of them walked, and they walked through the industrial areas, through the back alleys of Westbard. And we'd heard that they would like better connections from their neighborhoods to the Capitol Crescent Trail and find a safe connection from the Capitol Crescent Trail to the school. This plan does incorporate.
Hi. I want to again reiterate our thanks for your being here tonight. And I think we're all sympathetic to your having to essentially mediate between a lot of stakeholders, residents and voters. And also you have to deal with the county council that I think has already demonstrated its high density. Is that better? Anyway, thanks for mediating between citizens, builders, and a county council that I think has demonstrated that it is dedicated to high-density development in Montgomery County. I did want to say that earlier this year, the county council passed a zoning ordinance rewrite, and they also passed a remapping of zones. Zones were reduced, and I think the goal of the zoning ordinance rewrite was to make it a little bit easier for developers to bring plans forward, to make it a little more friendly for development. And the zoning mapping exercise, while translating some of the old zones to the reduced number of new zones, did increase heights on some of the confronting commercial properties. So there was a little bit of upzoning in that context. Could you bring back the slide that shows the residential units? Putting aside the as yet unquantified amount of commercial space that would be in this new plan, I think it's important to note that the residential housing units under current zoning could be doubled in the Westbard sector plan, almost 1104 up 971. I've also heard it said, maybe I'm not correct, but I've heard it said that under the current zoning, there could be a maximum of over 1 million square feet of commercial space available. Now, I'm having trouble with all of that headroom under current zoning, understanding the need to go further, to make the residential 3 times the current residential value, and to give builders more incentive to go high. And I heard what you said, Mark, about how builders need to have the economic incentives to make their business cases work. But I think you should recognize, you mentioned Equity One. Before any of the zoning ordinance rewrite was passed, or any of the remapping, Equity One paid $140 or so million for the right to develop it under current zoning. So the business case closed for them at that price and with current zoning. So I guess I'm wondering how you justify tripling instead of doubling the capacity of Westbard, and what justifies it?
Yeah, right.
Well, the numbers on proposed are for the entire Westbard site, so the entire sector plan site. So the portion on the Equity One site is just a small, small percentage of that, actually.
Yeah, well, that doesn't really answer the question, because Equity One paid a lot of money for their ability to upgrade under current zoning. They thought this was a good deal, a great neighborhood, an affluent neighborhood that would justify changing the makeup of the current retail establishment to a more pleasing and high, maybe somewhat more high, based on the current figure. So I guess we're all wondering, why is it necessary to add to the current zoning capacity?
Relatively the same as it is right now in the current zoning. Yes, it is. The heights right now are 45 feet. We're proposing on most of the Equity One site that would be 50 feet. On Westbard, I think he's referring to the Equity One site. Isn't that what you were referring to?
The figures I quoted were for the Westbard Equity One site, but I think you're talking about capacity in the whole Westbard sector.
Yes.
And cannot in my own mind justify why an increase from current zoning would be required to close the business case for development, especially when the county has adopted a new zoning ordinance rewrite that is more friendly to developers in getting their plans ahead. And Equity One has already demonstrated an assertion that the current zoning is sufficient to justify their business case for development.
Yes, and again, the height at the Equity One site, which is basically both sides of Westbard Avenue, along the top of the hill, the heights of those buildings will remain basically the way they are today. And so they are going to be able to achieve their goal of what they wanted as far as density under the current heights. The big increase in height is along River Road. Big, meaning we've gone from 45 feet to 75. The justification for that is that there will be need for additional density, additional height along River Road in order to spark any type of redevelopment of that area. The other side of that equation would be also that that the property owners, because they're very odd-shaped lots, will have to get together to create that development.
Also, too, so for example, on River Road, as Paul was mentioning, in order to go and spur on change, the other change that we, and I think somebody mentioned, how could we go ahead and get any type of naturalization, daylighting of the branch? The only way we're going to go and get expanded or enhanced county services, such as the Willett Branch restoration, such as potentially providing for a new school and library site, such as providing better connections to the Capital Crescent Trail, and also making better road connections, is through redevelopment. You're not going to get any of these things without the possibility of redevelopment.
I appreciate your hard work. I still am wondering about the figure I've heard about under current zoning, the possibility of up to 1 million to 1.5 million square feet of available commercial space, as well as the 971 or the doubling of current residential capacity in the Westbard sector. So if I'd like to have, maybe that's not exactly right.
We'll get
You
those
could tell
numbers
me, would you?
verified for you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you.
Hi, thanks for your work again. I think it's an exciting plan. As someone who's been here, working here, protecting the families that live here as a firefighter, and experiencing the community as someone who lives next door to it and works in it, I think the plan is a tremendous improvement over existing conditions. I'm very concerned about the speed of traffic, and I'm very concerned that your process of analysis highlights that, and what you can do in the shapes of the buildings and the streets that you improve and you create, and the intersections and connections that you create, that speed reduction is one of your top priorities. As much as there's congestion here, there's speeding here, and I have, the memories that I carry into retirement of the people here who have been killed and horribly injured over my career. This is a real problem, and it affects the access to all these services that we hear about for many of the vulnerable people here. It means that they don't make the trip because it's too scary, it's not appealing, and it's not efficient. So I'm really happy to see a lot of the work here. I'm concerned about the building heights, along with everyone else. I live next to downtown Bethesda, and my street, my neighbors, their children go to the school here. So I experience what people here are talking about they might experience with this area of roads. The quality of life and the ability to walk to get things done is just incomparable. I can walk to Paris. Literally, I can walk down to Le Louchis, which is 6 minutes from my house. I live near the Bethel Synagogue. And I can walk 10 minutes further to the Bethesda Metro Station and go to Paris without ever getting to a car. And so, it's fantastic, and I can meet the people in my neighborhood in that process, and that happens a lot. That interaction happens a lot. In Westbard, you can hook up at Starbucks in the big shopping center and look out at the sea asphalt of your coffee, and I've done that as a firefighter, park the fire trucks, have coffee there. And what this plan brings is so much more. Now, I went to Churchill High School, so maybe I'm a little bit biased here, but Churchill said in one of his speeches, we give shape to buildings, and then those buildings shape us. And that ability to walk and to share streets where drivers can see the improved streetscape and the uses along the street that are appealing and social helps everyone to share that space better. Now, on to the transportation network. You described the Capitol Crescent Trail and some of its connectivity. I didn't hear about a connection from the Capitol Crescent Trail to Crown Street, which would then enter Westbard right over there. So the school will be accessible to children right through the inside entrance. Is that the plan?
Yes, the street is now up on the knoll,
Yeah.
up above Crown Street.
But you have a
But there
connection
would
to the
be
trail?
sidewalks along that would connect down to the trail, yes.
Okay, all right. And the trail offers a 10-minute ride, maybe a 15-minute walk to the Bethesda Metro Station from here. So I think it's very important that the trail gets some special attention. Between River Road and Bethesda, the trail should be improved along the standards that are used in Europe, particularly Holland, where we have a 6 or 8 foot walking path alongside of a bike trail. This is for high-use facilities. So that would reduce a lot of the user conflicts. I find as a firefighter and as a trail user that the bridge presents some hazards. I will tell you head traumas where people have gone down the slope too fast and wiped out and had brain injuries. I would like you to look at a trail that crosses at grade and brings River Road over top. And at crossings that connect to the community at Massachusetts Avenue. We really should be able to have our children walk and get on the Capitol Crescent Trail before they cross Massachusetts Avenue and get off here at West Main Middle School, or get off further at some of the downtown facilities. Thanks.
Thank you.
How are you? Could we go back to the slide on the height projection? Could you walk us through? I'm particularly interested in the heights suggested for the giant site, and if you could go through that again.
Sure. The brown color that you see is up to 50 feet in height. The blue color is up to 75 feet in height. And the red color is up to 80 feet in height. So there's the two locations for the 80 feet at the ends of essentially at River Road and at the school, at the middle school playground area. And then the blue is primarily.
Okay. I have a number of comments on that.
Okay.
First of all, I think the 80 feet bordering on Westbard and the 80 feet bordering on Ridgefield and the 50 feet height bordering on Ridgefield and River to the west of Ridgefield are inappropriate for the area. And it's very disappointing to see those particular suggestions in the plan. I think that, first of all, it's very inconsistent with what the community representatives have been maintaining, and everyone who has taken part in the public process from the perspective of the surrounding communities has messaged since the beginning of Equity One's hearings. During the Equity One hearings, people were talking about wanting low-rise, low-density. When we came to the Charrette process this week, I sat in on the process that with, for example, the Kenwood Citizens Group they stressed the idea of low-rise, low-density. On the first night of the planning process, about a week ago Monday, the community plans, there were about 8 community plans drawn, with perhaps one exception. They focused on lower density. The Chevy Chase Friendship Heights Coordinating Committee recommended that the sector plan use a CNR configuration, which would concentrate heights at 35 feet and below. When 2 schemes were presented immediately prior to this meeting, there was one scheme that took heights up to 75 or 80 feet, and there was another scheme which left the heights at 50. From the comments I heard, the residents of the area were almost uniformly in favor of the 50-foot scheme. So therefore, it's very unsettling and disappointing to see the recommended scheme presented tonight. I think it really abrogates the desires of the community. I think we've also talked about who is the constituency, that homeowners in the area are also investors in the area. I've been here owning a home for 20 years. Finally, there's a couple of disingenuous sorts of remarks, perhaps by some of the developers. I've been in commercial real estate development for over 20 years, and I have taken part in numerous large-scale commercial acquisitions, and those are underwritten to, with respect, assuming that existing zoning stays in place. And there is also usually a downside analysis, which assumes that perhaps you will not be able to even build to maximum under current zoning, that you might have to keep the property as is. So there's an as-is scenario, there's a current zoning scenario, and beyond that there's upside scenarios. And to me it's very troubling that this process thus far has resulted in substantial upzoning. And again, my concern is the 50-foot heights west of Ridgefield, which impinge on a residential neighborhood. My concern is also the 75 and 80-foot properties, again, part of the Equity One site, and I really hope those could be reconsidered.
To answer your question, the CR zone has provisions of when the CR zone is adjacent to residential homes, that they have to step down. Okay, so you will not have 50-foot heights next to R60 zone. Okay, so that's a concern you don't have to worry about. That's covered in the CR zone. Also, design guidelines will cover that. The design guidelines will look at every area where CR zone abuts residential and address it. I've done several plans in the CR zone. That's what we had to do. The other question about River Road heights, we did hear residents ask us for 6 to 8 stories along River Road. This is not, we didn't hear it. I just want to put that out there. We have heard that. They're not speaking tonight. But that being said, River Road is most unlikely to develop under these zones that we propose because of mainly 2 things. These are properties that are all broken up under different ownership. For them to develop at 75 feet, they have to and many of these owners have told me, especially the owners of Whole Foods, that they have a 12-year lease on that property, and they can't even think about developing until 2026. Many other properties have told me they're totally happy with what they have, and in order to redevelop, they have to jump through so many hoops environmentally and putting packages together with their neighbors that River Road most likely is not going to develop. You really need to look at, Equity One, and these other properties, and we've kept those heights, basically, to where the present zone is keeping them, with some special exceptions.
But there's one point I'd like to make, and that's on the Ridgefield roadside the river roadside is west of Ridgefield. That impinges on that's more or less where the nursing home is today. That is surrounded by single-family homes, and I think that 50 feet there, whether or not there's a step up, is really a very inappropriate idea. There is, if you want to go 6 to 8 stories on Ridgefield, maybe do it in the areas that are down nearer to the industrial uses. Maybe do it immediately contingent to some of the high-rises, but not across Ridgefield on something that is next to a residential site. So I think that's number one. Number two, I get very little comfort from the response that, well, you have to assemble the property and the current owners might not want to sell. Developers are very good at assembling property, and that is how they create development value. And simply, the more density or height that you will allow on a site, the more likely it is that the current owner will want to sell. So I think that to a certain degree, the substantial 75 to 80 foot, for example, height requirements will incentivize existing owners to sell so that you will not achieve the result that the parcels remain lower density.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'll be brief. I have only lived here around for about 5 years, so I don't have the longevity of some folks, but I will say I see a lot to like in this plan as well. Like the firefighter gentleman before me, I just think that we could use a lot of these amenities, the connections of the trails, the foot amenable stuff, and I think it makes sense to me that density is required in order to support that stuff. So that could be a reasonable trade-off, but it's a few concerns that remain outstanding, and it sounds like it's partly the point in the process we are. It was sort of surprising that there weren't answers in advance to the questions of parking, traffic, and kids in schools. I think those are obviously what our biggest concerns are going to be. And you know, my kids go to Wood Acres and Pyle, and those are overcrowded now. So adding a whole other elementary school sounds like a good idea. And figuring out how the zoning is going to be jiggered to get enough kids at Westland, which is bigger, then maybe that's a way around that. But I don't think that anyone has said anything at all about parking, which when I see, you know, I don't mind losing a couple big ginormous parking lots to, you know, something that's more walkable and livable, but that parking lot is still parking. So are we using the right standards to make sure that there's enough parking for the people who are going to live there and those of us who need to go buy our groceries on Saturdays? And then again, you were referencing there will be studies done of how this will all impact the traffic on these already well-used roads. And I think you guys can probably anticipate that those will be very carefully examined by many of us. So I hope you're using really conservative or liberal or whatever the right word is, estimates of how much traffic these guys will generate, and not assume that everybody's going to be walking to Bethesda Metro, because that's not what's going to be happening.
Yeah, the schools will be studied, the traffic will be studied, parking needs to meet current zoning requirements, so they will all have to have the amount of parking that they are required under the zoning, which is a lot of parking, and a lot of that will probably be in structured parking, or possibly underground as well. So that's the change.
I have a question about your diagram up there, and then the question about the comments you made. Have the FARs been increased? I mean, you're talking about heights in your diagram there on the left. What about the FARs?
They have not been calculated yet.
So those could increase over what the current zoning rewrite is?
Possibly, yes. FAR is floor to area ratio. So if you have a site that is 10,000 square feet, and if you have an FAR of 1, you're allowed to build a building of 10,000 square feet on that site. That would be a 1 FAR. And so there are different numbers on all the different zones throughout the county.
And that affects the density of units that would be in a particular place, right? When are you going to propose or calculate the FARs for your proposed plan?
Yeah, all of that will be, as part of our study over the next 3 months, all of that on what the FAR will be, what the actual heights will be.
So how much lead time will we all get? Because height is one thing, but then how much density is it?
Yeah, as part of the process, we have 3 months that we're going to be working on this, then it goes to council. That is another long process, planning board. And within that, all of those issues will also be discussed with them as well. So the public will be involved in all of that, in all of those discussions.
Yeah, so how much lead time are we going to have before it starts going to the planning board? Like, you're giving us some lead time now, I guess, with the heights. What about the FARs?
We bring recommendations to the planning board middle of March, and we usually give you about a month lead time, 2 weeks to a month to review it. Then there's a public hearing where you get to come and voice your concerns to the planning board, and we document all those concerns, and we answer every one of them at subsequent hearings. They're called work sessions. And that could be about a 6-week process, maybe 2 months.
Also to, and something that we're doing with the Bethesda sector plan, and something that we may also do with the Greater Leadenville sector plan that our team is also working on, is as we bring forward and go through major milestones such as rolling out the staff draft to the planning board. Prior to rolling out the staff draft, we will go and provide what we call the online feedback loop, which we will go and provide several weeks in advance, copies of what we will be presenting to the board. And there will be an online comment system where folks can go and provide feedback to the planning staff.
The current heights of the zoning rewrite are about 35 to 40 feet in the blue, for the blue, okay, on River Road. And you're proposing raising them to 75.
Yes.
Equity One told us before the zoning rewrite was done that they could make a profit under the old zoning before November 1st rewrite. So they've already gotten that benefit from the zoning rewrite. That because it's increased residential now, so they can gives them an extra opportunity to make more profit, and increased some of the FARs and some of the heights. You said earlier that you were trying to update an outmoded sector plan for WestBard. And I'm just wondering, what are the pitfalls that you're trying to correct with this new concept? And make it be specific if you can. What's wrong with the current zoning rewrite now? What are you trying to avoid?
Again, so the zoning in and of itself is just that. It is a zoning envelope, and it does not address particular urban design issues. In a sector plan situation, we will get into the details. After we get through the sector plan, we will also get into what they call urban design guidelines, which will then go and provide the design intents, which the planning board also will be reviewing against. So we have the ability to go and at a very fine grain go and control the ultimate built environment here. And the idea there is to go and get a better quality community.
If I could add to that real quick, you know, when we first had our kickoff, we got the question, are we Equity One? And we got that throughout the entire meetings that we had. We kept saying, no, we're not. We're with the planning department, because they held their own sessions, I think, with the community that we attended as well. We set out to look at this plan holistically and not just at the Equity One site. And that's what this plan really intends to do, is just not look at the zoning on their site, but look at it for all of Westbard. And that's really what our planning team has set out to do and what we continue to do. So I wanted to add to what Mark was saying here, just on that zone in particular, but also for the whole Westbard site.
Well, that's what I'm asking, is the whole Westbard side. My question's in the vein of others. Who's driving this? What is driving the changes here? What is wrong with the current zoning rewrite specifically that you all think we need to change by bringing these new concepts?
Well, again, we have not gone out to say, okay, this one should be a certain CR zone or it should be a certain zone at this point. We are specifically looking at the building forms, the building mass, the heights, and how that relates to what would be the ultimate built environment. We have not put pen to paper on what a zone would be. It could be that the current zone for them works now. Otherwise, I personally think if it, they could have submitted and they can continue to work on their plans if they wanted to submit now. If that zone, meaning Equity One or any other property owner within this area. What we are looking at, though, is really trying to manage any kind of change and come up with a holistic plan that makes good planning sense. And that's really, the zone works for them now, and they could submit now. Again, we have not decided at this point what that zone could be based on what we're showing now.
Why are you, I don't understand why you're changing this. You don't see any problems with it. You're not identifying any problems with the current zoning rewrite. So why are you changing it?
Well,
To identify the problems first, and then
I think we are identifying some of the problems.
What are they specifically?
Big wallet.
Well, I mean, I think we've done, right, single use, we have the stream, we have Westbard Avenue, some of the connections, all throughout. I think we went through that, with this presentation, to identify a number of those issues.
What's the problem with Westbard Avenue? There's too crowded.
I didn't say that, no.
Well, what is the problem with Westbard Avenue?
Well, I mean, that's a big part.
Well, we're asking for specifics, that's all.
Okay, we have the top 10 up here. I mean, we went through those at the beginning of the presentation.
Those aren't
Those aren't
The problems, and your concepts are not addressing, first of all, if some people want the library in the middle of they want it moved, I don't think they want it at the price of 80-foot buildings.
Thank you, we've heard that.
It doesn't seem like it, that's the problem. But what are the problems that you see in the current zoning that need to be changed? What are they?
We haven't identified all of them, but certainly the idea right now of service on a major street, service access to buildings on a major street is not ideal in any type of community. Certainly, wide expanses of surface parking are not ideal in any type of a community.
Why not?
Well, because in order to allow a greater pedestrian-friendly street, someplace that people can walk, we try to create places where people want to walk. I think it's important, and I also think that having less asphalt helps our environment.
Oh, but creating more buildings is not reducing asphalt.
We also think that inside the Beltway is places for people to live, and it's a more dense area than farmlands and forested areas in the outer counties to develop into the future. And that's a
Space out there.
We don't have a metro.
So, are you,
Downtown Bethesda has a metro. We don't have a metro.
why are you making changes before you've developed some problems? That's my next question. If you haven't developed a specific set of problems, why are you making changes to the concept first before you've identified the problems? What's the policy or general practice there?
These are the issues that we've heard today on the issues with the site. So, thank you for your comments. We have a lot of
It's a
people.
question, it's not a comment.
Well, give somebody else a chance to talk.
I don't have an answer for the question.
So, just, my question was not about specifics anymore, it's about why are you taking this practice?
Come on, give somebody else
course
an
of action?
opportunity.
Do you have an answer for that?
We've already explained why we're doing this plan. The age of the sector plan to date, it is time for it to be changed because they need to be changed in order to accommodate modern planning, modern buildings, modern environmental issues.
This is the Jonathan Broker telling us we're too stupid to know what we want in our neighborhood.
So,
Stop lying to us, tell us what the problem is. Have this.
do you have any further answer?
No.
Thank you.
I wanted to say that I think that there's been I hear some consensus among the residents that we would like some actual recommendation in the plan to protect gas stations as part of the light industrial that would be explicit. Secondly, I think when we're looking at the density and the timetable for how quickly the area might grow under the plan when it's finished, is that we really need to look specifically at the Whitman's phenomenon in terms of people wanting to come here to a place that's right inside the DC line and has the Whitman School District. And what I'm hearing from the parents over the last week is that already today that the school experience is suffering with no additional development so far. And because there's no office space coming in with this plan, all of the new residents will be going downtown in the morning, and without any significant improvement or provision on River Road and Massachusetts Avenue, which there is none as of this stage, that seems like a traffic disaster. If anything, it seems that River Road will be slowing with additional stoplights and narrowing of lanes. And I think that, and finally, the overall character is going from suburban to urban, which I don't think is appropriate. I don't think the 80-foot building that has appeared just since Friday on the Westwood Shopping Center site, I think that's totally inappropriate. As well as for the people who have the backyards that back up to these areas on River Road, it's, even if it is stepped down, it's still going to be very imposing over their homes. And I think that in all these concerns that we really need to consider the people who actually live here, whose kids go to the schools and have to live with this mess, as opposed to the developers who look at our neighborhood as a monopoly board from outside of the area. That 45 feet is plenty for them, and everything else I think is going to be gravy on top of that. I think.
I wanted one comment. You all understand also that Ridgefield, we've moved Ridgefield from River Road to Westbard. And so the building, the taller building, is even further east, which is still smaller than the office building, or shorter than the office building that's there today. Okay, yeah.
The Little Falls branch, which the Willett branch joins right by the EYA townhouses, is one of the most unhealthy and impaired creeks in Montgomery County because the development in this area happened so long ago. The Willett branch is not just a drainage ditch, it's a real creek. It is fed by several small area springs. That's why there's water in it all the time. And as I understand it, if their development were happening, if this area was being developed from virgin land, the current development regulations would require a 100-foot stream buffer on each side.
Yeah.
The Willett Branch has nothing like that. It has parking lots that go right up to the edge. It's lined with concrete. It's dumped with trash, and it's a magnet for graffiti. Most people don't even know, aren't even aware that there's a creek back there. and even fewer have seen it. The Little Falls Watershed Alliance is hosting a creek walk of the Willock Branch in the Westbard area this Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll be meeting at the Westward 2 shopping area, the parking lot there. And it won't take too long, maybe 45 minutes, an hour at the most. And details are on our website, lwa.org. Wait, I missed it. Thank you. lwfa.org. Nervous. I also have flyers with the information I'm happy to hand out. Just raise your hand, and they're also on the center table back here. Just in the parking lot. The west, yeah. The creek has the potential for so much more than its current sorry condition. With a much wider forested stream buffer, the Willow Branch could be a really lovely green space. A walkable creek that people would use to get places, with paths, and if we dream a little bit, maybe even have a cafe on it. The creek has the potential to be an amenity in this area. If you can't join us for our creek walk on Saturday morning at 10, there are a couple of easy access points that you can at least get a glimpse. You cannot walk to the creek currently. But if you go to the Westward Towers apartment building and go behind in the parking lot, there's a little bridge that goes over the creek. You barely have to get out of your car, and you can get an image of what a sorry state it is, really. It's really so disappointing that this plan really doesn't add any green space to speak of. This community values greatly green space and a healthy environment. So as all of you are submitting your comments on emails and with letters, I encourage you to include a plea for more green space, a wider stream buffer along the Willow Branch that is walkable, and a healthier creek. And I'm happy to hand out the flyers.
Thank you very much. Our staff, and particularly our environmental planner, but all of our staff, we hope that we will be able to go and bring forth a naturalized and more ecologically enhanced Willow Branch and Little Falls. I just also want to go and mention to everybody here that the school is expecting us to be out of here by no later than 9:30. We'll need to go and probably wrap this up in the next 15 minutes. Also, too, there are folks who have been leaving, and they have been asking when this PowerPoint presentation will be up on our website. It will be on the park planning website by 10 a.m. tomorrow.
From what I'm hearing, there's three main concerns of the community. Those are density, and density. And particularly, I think it plays out in traffic. Just south of this zone on Sagamore Road, they're opening that new facility, 7,000 jobs there. 3,000. But we're adding 2,000 new units here to what's currently here at 203. That's 4,000 to 6,000 cars. 3,000 more cars coming from that facility. We're looking at a lot of traffic in this area. I think that's the biggest concern, because that traffic's going to come right through this area.
Thank you.
Back to the comments about the height of some of the buildings, especially River Road, Westbard Avenue. You're envisioning something to be Rockville Pike and the Rio, correct? Something of that height, have the mixed-use facilities
Rockville,
underneath,
yeah,
have a
Rockville.
giant at the base level, and apartment buildings on top.
Yeah, Rockville downtown is similar to that, right? Yes.
How does that help the Westbard community in this small sector? When this is all residential here, everybody here is residential. When I first moved here, as I stated before, I've been here a couple of years now. I actually live and work in the Westbard area, conveniently for me. But that made it more enticing me to be here versus someplace like Rockville or anywhere else. If I were to have to travel somewhere, everybody knows commuting in this area is horrendous. The Red Line is already overpacked. Metro is already increasingly overpacked, and they're still trying to address that issue, especially with the Red Line. You're going to increase more people and have more buildings. How are you going to increase any type of fire protection and emergency services? You have one small firehouse around the corner with one ambulance. You're going to put 3,000 more people here. It's going to increase call volume. There isn't any bit of that provision that has any bit of a new firehouse there or any other type of services to better solve any residents' problems. Where were the problems that are here now that any of these residents have?
The issue regarding emergency access has to do with actually providing as much access as possible, and it's one of the issues.
Not access, emergency services.
Services.
Personnel.
That get